Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of the Kentucky Momma podcast. This week, I am pleased to announce that I have parenting skills coach, speaker, and award-winning author Deborah Ann Davis joining me. Please say hi.
Hi. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so happy to have you. Today, we are going to be discussing a couple of different topics that revolve around mothers and their daughters. Deborah has written a book called How to Keep Your Daughter from Slamming the Door, and I have only skimmed the surface of it, but oh my gosh. What I have read, the book is really eye-opening, to be honest. And so I've read the first chapter completely, and I have taken some of the quizzes that Deborah asked me to, and she recommended we could discuss the results here, and I'm really excited to dive into that towards the end. So Deborah, if you just want to start and maybe give me a little background on you and your why and things of that nature, I'll give it to you.
Well, thank you. First of all, I'm very happy to be here, especially since you're from Kentucky and that's where I was born. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I'm a Connecticut Yankee, but I was born in Kentucky.
Yeah.
And let's see. Okay, I taught high school for 27 years. And when I went to college, I knew absolutely positively I did not want to teach. I knew that. But after a few years in college, it just all of a sudden the path got laid out, boom, 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 and that's where I went because that's what I was meant to do. Mm. And I am a high school teacher because I happen to love teenagers. They are my energy. They are my source of inspiration. I love the way, you probably saw this in the book, that one minute they're like sassy and smart mouth, and the next minute they're like, oh no, I have a pimple, or am I doing this right? Am I accepted? I love that flip-flop. Mm-hmm. Once people get older, they lose the ability to be vulnerable in front of other people, and that's one of the reasons why I like teenagers so much. So basically in my world, I spent a lot of time with moms when there was a problem. They would come into school and we'd have a parent teacher student conference, and they would be mad at each other 9 times out of 10. So I couldn't really address how to help with the situation academically until I could get them to stop doing this. So I developed all these little skills, tricks, tips, whatever you want to call it, and in order to smooth the path between them a little bit, so they could hear each other. Because if they can't hear each other, you might as well not be talking. Mm-hmm. And that turned out, in hindsight, to be my superpower. I didn't know that everybody couldn't do that. I thought everybody could do that. The people just happened to be upset in front of me. So what I've done is I've taken all those years of experience, including mistakes I made. It's not all like, "Ooh, I'm great," but it's all that stuff in there in one place. So instead of moms having to reinvent the wheel, they can go right here and say, "Oh, a chapter on how to talk to snarky teens, and that's where I'm at," or how to take care of myself better so that I can be a better role model for them. I mean, it's all in there.
Yeah. It's and again, just from what I read, I'll just tell you something that kind of resonated that I think is kind of a through and through is just the guilt. So much guilt. It's and that wasn't even one thing that I had on the agenda to talk about, but just reading that, I was like, yep, I wish I could just get rid of this, but I can't. So
yes. Well, you know what? It's really important that we do get rid of our guilt, because first of all, it's taught by society and through advertising and all the things that make us discontented with what we're doing in our lifestyle, and all the things that make us yearn for something else. All of that is contributing to this. And if we can get rid of our guilt, then we are providing a really good role model for our girls so that they will live guilt-free. Now, I'm not saying that, do you mind if I talk about this for a second?
No, sure, go ahead.
I'm not saying that there's no place for guilt, but I am saying there's no place for old guilt at all. It doesn't belong anywhere. It doesn't do anything for anybody. It doesn't improve any situation. It doesn't fix anything. There's no purpose for it. So I learned a long time ago, these 4 steps, they're really easy. Okay, they're not easy. They're easy steps, but they're hard to execute. But it's a great conversation to have with your daughters, because if you can talk to them about this and lay the groundwork for them, you can help them with this later. And you can also say, and this is what I'm working on for me, because that's being a role model. It's okay to say, I'm also a work in progress. I used to say, like when my daughter was 1 year old, I said, I've never been the mother of a 1-year-old before. When she turned 2, I said, I've never been the mother of a 2-year-old before. You know, because we're growing and maturing as adults, as women, as people at the same time. Okay, so the first step, if you've done something that you're feeling guilty about, so let's assume that this is actually your fault, okay? Then the first thing you do is you put out the fires. You make sure there isn't anything going on that's going to make the situation worse. So you fix whatever it is that you can fix. The second thing you do is that you say, you go to the injured party and you say, is there something I can do to make this better? Then you do it. Then the third thing you do is you go and you ask them for forgiveness. And here's the interesting part. It doesn't matter if they forgive you or not, because that's their journey. That's what they have to work through. But when you go and you ask forgiveness, you've done everything that you could do. You made sure it didn't get worse. You try to fix it so it could get better, and you ask to be forgiven. You can't do anything else for that situation. Right? The fourth step is the hardest one, because the fourth step means that you have to forgive yourself.
Yep. When I was reading through, I was like, well, yep, I totally agree with that. So,
but if you can do that in front of your daughter.
Yeah, I can imagine, because it allows them and gives them the space to forgive themselves if something were to happen. So
exactly. And the other flip side of that is they will know that they will be forgiven with you. There isn't something that they have to feel bad about for the rest of their lives. I mean, they're young, right? They need to know that this relationship between you and me, it's solid.
Yeah, I agree. So this was the first topic. So now the second topic that I wanted to get into was from rebellious to resilient, raising confident daughters. Just from the title alone, I feel this so much. So as I previously told you, I have 3 daughters, 5, 3, and 1. The 2 oldest, they are 1000% rebellious. And I truly am thankful to have very strong-willed and opinionated daughters. But damn, it can be very hard sometimes because I'm a controlling person. Who doesn't like to be in control? So when they kind of push back, it's like, oh, wait a second, you know? So it's very hard to try and I try to be very conscious about not killing that fire or flame within them, because I don't want to do that, but I know I don't do as good of a job as I probably could. So tell me everything you know. Sorry.
That was a guilt statement.
Yes.
This is everything. Don't feel badly about what you're learning. This is your learning curve, you know, and this is what motherhood is. And we always feel badly about the job we're doing, because it looks like those people over there are doing a really good job. And I'm like, when my daughter was born, and I happened to have 2 sister-in-laws who had babies, like we were all 3 months apart, and I was the 3rd one. I was like, oh my gosh, they're handling everything just fine. I'm the only one who can't handle this. I'm the only one in the family who can't handle this. I'm probably the only one in my town who can't handle this. You know, it's not a real thing.
Yeah.
This is, I created the Awesome Mom Tribe, and this is what that's about. Awesome moms try and try and try and try. And then when they're tired, they rest for a minute and they get up and they try again. It's not about being a perfect mom, right? It's about finding the best route for your kids. It's about entertaining them, helping them with their education, working through their relationship issues with their friends. That's what an awesome mom does. And you can't sit there and say when you're pregnant, well, I'm going to read this book on how to handle kids, because you don't know who's going to come out the chute.
Yeah.
So, okay, so here's the thing. You took that quiz.
Yes.
Okay, so that was a learning style inventory that's from the Department of Education for Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all different kinds all over the place. But basically, the highest numbers that you came up with are your learning styles, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. So what kind of learning style did you come up with for yourself?
I was the kinesthetic.
Okay. Now, when you quickly think, what would my girls be? Like, think about the questions in terms of how they would answer them or what you have observed.
Yep.
Good luck with the 1-year-old, but you know what I'm talking
about. Yeah. So when I did this, I didn't do it for the 1-year-old. I just did it for the 2 older ones. So the 5-year-old, I quickly guessed auditory, and for the 3-year-old, I quickly guessed the same as me, kinesthetic. So
okay, and so you've got a 5-year-old who is strong-willed and pushes back.
Yes.
And you've got a 3-year-old who is also pushing back, but most likely is imitating your 5-year-old.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, so what I do, I have this process I do to help people connect with their daughters. And what you do is you look at the way you do things. Now, there are tons of personality quizzes that you can take online. I mean, a lot of them. So you could use any of those too, but I use the learning inventory because it doubles as how does your child learn? Okay. Also, just because you rated lower in one of the other numbers doesn't mean you're not good at it.
Right.
For some kids, it may mean that you need some help with that. Okay, so let me stop prefacing this and get ready. If you are a person who learns in a particular way, then that's the way the world makes sense to you. The teachers who teach that way probably created a situation where you got better grades. And the teachers who teach in the way where it's your weakest number was probably your hardest way for you to get good grades in those classes.
Makes sense.
And for a lot of kids, when they're faced with a teacher who has a different learning style than they do, and so therefore it translates into a teaching style, which is different than the way they learn, they end up feeling insecure and stupid and whatever, I'm not getting this type thing. And really it's because of the way the person is processing things. Because as for me, the way I teach the way I learn, the way it makes sense to me. But I also had to learn how to teach in the other categories so I could make sure I could reach all my students.
Makes sense.
Okay, so now you take a kid who is a visual learner, all right? Say it's an older kid, not your 5-year-old. And they're sitting on the couch watching TV, and you go by and you say, I'd like you to take out the garbage when the show's over. And the kid says, sure, right? So you go off and you come back an hour later and the TV's off and the garbage hasn't been taken out and the kid is just like totally hasn't processed it, right? Well, if you are an auditory learner, a verbal direction makes sense. So that's how you give your directions. But if your kid is a visual learner, putting a sticky note on the table in front of the kid so when the TV show is over, they see the note, they go, oh, I'll go do that. So what happens to parents is when you have a different learning style or personality style than your children, you interact with them as if they are going to interact back the way you would expect. When you have the same one as your child, you say, for this example, make sure you take care of that. If they're an auditory person, then they'll hear that and they'll process it and it'll get filed away, so they'll make sure they'll take care of that. So one of the things that you can do is pay attention to your learning style of your kids. So you can also pay attention to the learning style, teaching style of their teachers when they get to school. So meanwhile, if you look at it from the child's point of view, all right, let me just back up, tell you a quick story. So I held this retreat for moms and teenage daughters, and I gave them personality quizzes to do. So they had to do it 2 times. The first time, everybody did it for themselves and came up with what they were, but they couldn't share it. And then the second time, everybody pretended to be the other person. So the mother pretended to be the daughter, and the daughter pretended to be the mom. So all the mothers got the personalities correct on their kids. That's why I said when you make a quick guess, you're probably right on it. The kids who had the same personality type as the moms got the moms right. But that was because all the kids did the same thing. They all gave the moms their own personality type. So if you got a kid who has a kind of an outgoing, extroverted personality, and they would react in a particular situation the way you would expect, the way that child would expect everybody to react, because they see it through their own lens, right? And then the mother has a different reaction. The kid's like, whoa, what happened? Who is this person? What have you done with my mother? And then everything is on unsure footing for them because they don't know when's the next time they're going to get it wrong. And so you take that to the older kids where they think that their request to go to a party in the next town with this friend who just got their driver's license would be okay with their mother because that's would be a thing that they would do.
Yeah.
When the mother says no, the kid's like, no, and they feel blindsided, and that's when they erupt. And so now you've got the mini 5-year-old version of that, right? So she expects you to react in certain ways that make sense to her learning style, for her processing methods. And you are expecting her to react in a particular way that matches the way you would react. So the trick is to identify who she is and then find out what you do to reach those people. For kids who are kinesthetic, when you yell at them, they don't hear you. They're like, they don't hear your words at all. They are so into the movement and the anger in your face, and it's all about what's going on with the body. They don't hear anything in your message. So with kinesthetic kids, you can write them a note. You can sit down and talk to them. You can go for a walk and discuss it shoulder to shoulder, not facing somebody, right? So if you want to have your kids be strong, then you have to figure out what their learning style is, what their personality style is, and then you need to figure out how to work with that. And guess what? It works with spouses too. When you have a different personality type than your spouse, then you expect him to respond to a situation in a particular way because that's the way it would make sense to you in your world.
Right.
And when they do it differently, you're feeling blindsided. Like, why would you do that? You know that old book, Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus? Well, that's what that's about. It's because they interpret things differently, they process things differently, and they go forward differently. But it isn't just about genders, because most of those stereotypes in there didn't match my husband and myself at all. But we still had those problems because I didn't understand who he was. We ended up taking this personality quiz with Dr. Gary Smalley is the person who put it out. It has 4 animals: the otter, the lion, the beaver, and the golden retriever. And the husband had always told me, no, I don't react that way to those things. I was like, sure, yeah, you do, right? We take these personality quizzes. We were like at a party. We were taking these personality quizzes. And I was like, it was right there. Everything he told me about what he reacts to and what he doesn't react to, it was right there. I was like, oh my gosh, all this time, because he's a beaver. He's a person who is very pragmatic and step by step and analytical. And I'm a golden retriever. I'm a cheerful, loyal otter type person, right? And I thought that was important to everybody. It's not important to everybody. It's important to the people of my personality type. So my husband's adorable. He says to me, oh, I'm supposed to, you look really nice today. Oh, you did a really good job today. You know, I mean, he doesn't need praise, which I did not believe that in the beginning. But once I understood who he really was, it made a complete difference in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
That is the thing that you can bring to your relationship with your daughter.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that, because it was just for us. I think 2 episodes ago, I had my husband join me, and we did an episode on our take on what to expect if you don't have kids. And we kind of touched on the personality thing. It's like you kind of have this expectation, okay, person 1, person 2, make 3 kids. How are they all so different, type of thing. So, and I guess we didn't expect them to be so on opposite ends of the spectrum, and you kind of have to cater to each one in different ways. And how one responds to something doesn't mean the other one's going to respond to that in the same way. So it's just, to your point, we are learning as we go, but it is very hard. So
Yeah.
it is very hard.
Well, the other thing is, now that you're set on this path, you can't undo it. You're going to go look for this information, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, once you do that, you will find there are some things that overlap. And once you find those things, those will really limit what you have to make up. When you
Mm-hmm.
know that this works for child 1 and child 3, and this one works for all 3 of them, and this one works for child 2 and child 1,
Mm-hmm.
then you'll have all these little tricks in your tool belt that you'll be able to use with, diffusing tantrums and all that, all those things that are inevitable.
Right. So I think the next thing is, so the next topic is reducing the stress on our daughters. So kind of, I feel like I probably inevitably, God, you're going to get mad at me because I feel like this is mom guilt all over again, but I feel like,
mad at you. Wait, hang on one second. Whatever it is you're thinking, just forgive yourself for it before you say it.
Okay. Then I won't even say it.
No, go ahead and say it.
I feel like I absolutely stress my daughters out.
Well, the interesting thing is my whole discussion about how to reduce the stress in your daughters was totally directed towards the moms.
Okay, good. So again, tell me everything you know.
Well, okay then. So this is going to be a 20-hour podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the first thing you have to do is recognize the stress in yourself. And once you do that, then you have to address the stress in yourself. What I've been guilty of over the course of my lifetime is making lists of things that stress me out. And then I like, okay, I put that list over there, because once I make that list of things that stress me out, job and trying to be a good spouse and trying to be a good mother and trying to make sure I find things for the family to do, and once I made those lists, it would overwhelm me.
Yes.
And then I'd go right back to what I was doing.
Yes.
So, and plus, when you're teaching, you spend your evening hours and your summertime and your weekends working on stuff to help your kids move forward. And it's funny, I was straightening up my office the other day, and I came across this box of stuff I stashed. I throw things into to write podcasts, to write blog posts off of.
Mm-hmm.
And I found this note I had written back when my daughter was in the 7. It was a reminder to stop treating her like a 9th grader, because my forte was high school, right? And I didn't know what to do with the little kids.
That makes sense.
So I had to go back and look up how to handle small children. I was so glad when she became a tween, because I was like, yeah, this is my department. I know what to do now. It's just like, all right, everybody step back. Supermom is here. But so this is what I would do. I would make a list of what you wish. Make a wish list. And I'm not saying in what area. I'm just saying make a wish list. And pick one thing to aim for. So with all the craziness going on in your life, pick one thing that you want to aim for. That's the first thing I would say. And then the second thing I would say, there's in the book, there's these things I call quick fixes. you can do like spot reduction on your stress throughout the day. And you can teach these things to your children. And they are very easy, self-soothing things. But this is what I want to share first. I'll do the quick fixes in a second. But I was reading this book. It was about how to be happier. And I don't ever quote it because he didn't put any resources. He didn't say where he got any of his information. So I never quote him, even though I know what he was saying was spot on. But here's the thing. He was listing things that are self-soothing. Now, when your child gets upset, what do? They stomp their foot, or they raise their voice, or they roll their eyes and throw their head back, right? So he was doing all these things that you can do to self-soothe. Now, listen, think in terms of a tantrum, but think in terms of self-soothing at the same time. Say that 3 times fast. Okay. If you want to get yourself more grounded, which basically means bringing yourself into the center and stop worrying about what's around you, you can tap your feet on the ground. So banging your feet on the ground actually grounds your body. That vibration is an intentional change you're making in your body, and you're making a decision to do that. So all of those things combine to give you a moment of calm. When you see a child stomping their foot, that is what they're doing.
Makes sense.
Another way you can I gotta change that term. Self-soothe is to raise your eyes up like you're looking up at the sky. Do that right now. See how your stomach feels. If anyone's listening to this and you're driving, don't do it.
No, it feels like lighter.
Yes. So what do kids do when they're upset? They roll their eyes. Right?
Huh.
And then the next one is, if you take a deep, don't do this yet. I want you to hear the whole thing first. If you take a deep breath, and when you exhale it, try to create a sensation of relief. Right? Try that now. To inhale, when you breathe out, think relief.
Same thing. You just feel lighter. Like,
yes.
You kind of just feel the tension in the shoulders go away, and kind of, I'm sitting in a chair, so I like kind of sink in my chair a little bit more. And
see, for me, it also does something in my stomach. That's where my whole reaction is my stomach. So it makes my stomach feel relieved, I guess. So what do kids do when they're upset? Right? This noisy exhale. So all these things, all the things that you associate with what we call bad behavior or rude behavior or whatever, is a sign or a flag that the child's at the end of their rope and they're helping themselves get over it. Even slamming the door, that finite wall between you immediately, which gives them a barrier between their perceiving your anger and themselves. Right? All of that is self-soothing. The problem arises when we take it personally and we react in kind. But when you understand that what you're looking at is a person who is trying to help themselves feel better, not a person who is trying to get at you, it's so much easier to deal with. I mean, you've got 1, 3, and 5, right? Mm-hmm. When your 1-year-old starts crying and screaming and kicking, your mind goes to, what's going on? I need to fix something. What is the problem, right?
Correct. When
the 5-year-old does screaming and kicking, it feels disrespectful.
Yeah, I get really irritated.
So the thing is to reframe how you're looking at it and say, my child is showing me that she's not coping and I need to help her. Mm-hmm. So what that does is it takes you from you being over here and her being over there to you saying, I forgot what hand I said, you being here and this being her, and being at each other, for you coming over here and saying, let me help you. anything you do during that time when she's having a tantrum to say, I love you no matter what, will make her feel more secure, because when you completely lose it and you fly off the handle, that in the middle of that, there's a little anxiety of, am I going to be able to pull myself back? Am I going to create damage during this time? Well, you take a kid, right? They had no way of weighing that. They have no idea if they're going to say or do something that's going to permanently alienate you. This book, right? How to Keep Your Daughter from Slamming the Door. My semi-grown daughter, when she was in her 20s and I was working on this, was saying, you can't write that book. I didn't slam any doors. I was like, well, why do you think that is? My husband and I are laughing on the sides going, yeah, she didn't slam the door. What she would do is she would stomp off, see her grounding herself, and she would put distance between us, which would take her out of our energy field. And then she'd shut the door really loudly. And then she'd open it up and say, sorry, I didn't mean to do it that long. And shut it loudly again and open it and said, didn't mean that either. So she wasn't trying to be, she was old enough where it sounded disrespectful. So she didn't want that. She didn't want that permanent barrier in our relationship, but she needed a release. Right. And, so I just ran out of steam.
I think I would say me, and again, I kind of touched on it earlier. I think it's my husband and I both, and it's not necessarily like the greatest, but again, with the irritability, we find ourselves more irritated with their coping mechanisms, and then we try to correct them to cope a different way, and it's not how they want to cope, which then leads to epic tantrum and breakdown.
So there's a whole bunch of stuff there. I don't want to lose these thoughts. Don't forget to do the personality test with your husband, because if he has a personality that's similar to one of the kids that you don't, then they will be able to solve problems together easier. The tantrum, let the tantrum go. Let them go. Put your earphones in, put on some music, and sit with them while they're having their tantrum. And then, my daughter had this tantrum that I couldn't reach her. She'd thrown herself backwards into a clothing rack at Sears by the door, by the entrance. So it was all these people going in and out, and you could see my daughter's legs sticking out of the clothing rack, kicking and screaming, and I was so embarrassed. And it's like, I don't know, probably close to 4 billion people walked by at that time.
Of course.
And she was just kicking and screaming. I couldn't reach her because her feet were going to get me, right? So she had this pause for a breath, and I said, are you done yet? And she goes, no. And she went back into it, and I was like, ah. And then this older woman, I say older, but she's probably the age I am now, but I was, a young mother at the time. She pats me on the arm and says, you're doing the right thing, honey. Don't you give in. She'll wear herself out. And then she kept going. I was like so grateful, So I'm standing there like this. And I recognized that the people walking by weren't being judgy. They were being sympathetic, because one thing I know for sure, they were all really thankful that it wasn't them.
Right.
So she's kicking and screaming, and the periods of kicking and screaming are getting shorter and shorter and shorter because she's wearing out. And this tantrum was because I had promised her we were going to see the toys before we left the store, but we had run out of time.
Yeah. So it's always something like that with mine too.
Right?
So.
Yeah. I mean, she wasn't being unreasonable. She wasn't able to cope. So anyway, she finally wore herself out, and I said, are you done? And she went, yes. And I said, okay. So I helped her out of the rack, and we left the store. And she never did it again, because what she learned was that it didn't get her anywhere. She did, however, learn how to have conversations.
Yeah. I think, again, that's just the biggest thing, especially, if you ever had a girl scream at the top of their lungs, it is like and we have, take the 1-year-old out of it, man, the 5-year-old and the 3-year-old, get them going, and it is like
Yep.
you need high decibel earphones on to like so yeah, I have been, and it's again, we're talking about an extreme situation right now, giving the pandemic and the quarantine, and I'm home alone with them, and I'm just like, I have kind of been doing that and I referenced this before, but for like pure energy conservation, I'm like, I can't argue with you. Like I can't. Like, you can go to your room and you can
That's
sleep.
actually the perfect response.
Yeah.
That is the perfect response.
Because I think too, it allows them to process their emotions. It allows them to be angry and mad and sad or whatever they are at that moment. And then to your point, it's like, okay, that didn't really do anything for me.
Yes.
So next time maybe I won't do that. So
Yep. And see, the other thing is that what you have to tell them is that no matter what, I will always love you.
yes.
You are yelling, if you're mad, if you're upset, I am always going to love you. And if I get mad, I'm always going to love you. So, I mean, and the other thing is, don't be across for them. Don't be facing them when they're having their tantrum, because that beam of negative energy coming at you, that's, I mean, that might as well be a hurricane blowing at you, because it does affect you.
I can see how intimidating that could be for them.
No, for you. For them yelling at you. That's their negative energy pitching at you. You're getting it full in the face. And even though you're the mother and you're taking the higher road and you're the more mature at most times, that, you know, that affects you. So if you go sit next to them, let their energy blow past both of you, then it will be much easier to handle it. Plus, believe it or not, the volume next to the speaker is lower than the volume in front of the speaker.
I believe that.
So if she's gonna have a tantrum, then go get some nail polish and go sit next to her and start polishing your toes. So you're shoulder to shoulder. She's not being abandoned because of her questionable behavior or objective behavior, I should say. And when she runs out of energy, you are there. And then when you have the conversation afterwards, or the hug, or the, here, let me put some polish on your nails, or whatever, then you will be modeling a way to behave. And she will learn how to do it.
That's one thing I have been trying to be better about, is if I get out of hand or if I yell when it's not necessary, you know, after it blows over, I always try to go back and say, I'm very sorry. None of that was your fault. It was, mommy just didn't feel well, you know, was upset or angry in the moment, but none of that was your fault. And I love you. I love you. I've said, I love you. And I'm sorry like a million times.
Everybody gets angry, but it doesn't matter, because everybody gets over it. Right. That's what you say to them. Everybody gets angry and everybody gets over it. But the other thing you can do is, during the time when you're angry, you can say, I love you. Right there, smack in the middle of all of it. Okay, now I'm going to give you a couple of quick fixes.
Yeah, I'm here for it.
This is my favorite one. I call it fake smiling.
Oh yes, I read this. I read it.
If you grit your teeth and widen your lips as wide as you can possibly get them, like a fake smile, it triggers the happy hormones in your body, just as if you were really smiling. And it interrupts your negative chemical flow. So if you're really angry with somebody, you go just like that, you know, one big grin right in the middle of it, it interrupts it, and the absurdity of it will interrupt them. Yeah. So I can hardly wait for you to try that.
Yeah. I'm sure my husband will be really mad at first.
See, the other thing is, if you tell people ahead of time, they won't be. Because what they will recognize is that, oh, she is trying to make this better. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And that's the other, you remember the old thing when you were a kid, and they say count to 10? It works. Counting to 10 works. And the thing is, you tell your children, next time I'm getting mad, I'm going to count to 10 before I say something.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll also learn their numbers. But anyway, you count, and they'll say, what are you doing? Or interrupt me. You say, mommy's mad, and I'm trying to make that go away. This is how I make that go away. And you count to 10. If at the end of the 10, you're still mad, you know what? I was madder than I thought. I need to count again. And you do it in front of them so they can see it. And then you can say, no, wait. 8, 9, right? You just say, no, this is what I'm doing, because I'm getting mad at you, and I don't want to react towards you in anger. So I'm gonna fix myself. And you can fix yourself too when you learn to count. When you're a good girl and you learn to count.
Yeah. That's
And when they're older and they're, tweens and teens, and they say things like, I hate you, and it hurts awfully when they're older, because you feel like they are intellectually meaning it, but it isn't. It is still just a self-soothing blah, 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 right?
The only thing that I get now from like the 5-year-old is she wishes she had a different mom. So I have to assume that it's a similar meaning behind it.
So what you can say when she says, I wish I had a different mom, you say, okay, wait a second, I'll go get her. You step out of the room and you come back in and you give her a big hug. Different mom is here.
That's a good one. I like that.
Because what she's really saying is she wants the comfort when we're cuddling.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not really about you. She doesn't know how to tell you. I wish I could behave better so our relationship will be better. She doesn't know.
Yeah.
And then here's the other thing. Be grateful for the hissy fits, because without them, you don't know that your kid's not coping.
Yeah.
They internalize it. I can't even tell you how many kids I've had in school who've stopped going to school to be homeschooled because they stopped being able to come out of the house. Anxiety and stuff like that. Now, I'm not talking about people who say, I've evaluated the public school and system and I've decided that homeschooling, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who are into the public school system and their children lose the ability to attend school. I've had kids who stay in the guidance counselor's office all day, and we send down assignments for them and to do, because they're afraid to come into the classroom. They're afraid they'll have a panic attack there or something, and be embarrassed in front of the other kids.
Right.
So those are quiet children. They aren't the ones who are yelling. So be grateful for that hissy fit.
No, yeah, that's a good perspective change, honestly.
And don't take it personally. It's not about you.
Right.
It's about them not feeling like they can cope.
I like that. Yeah.
I have one more quick fix for you.
Yeah.
So we did the counting to 10, and I touched on this, but the step back and come back routine, you say to them, I'm going to step away here for a couple of minutes, and I need to calm myself down, and I will come back and hug you. And you say to them, that's what I'm doing, because that's what you teach them. When you're upset with somebody, you don't keep going at it. You step back. And you say, when you're a big girl, you'll be able to do this too.
Yeah.
And then there's the deep breathing, right?
Yes. Right? We do deep breathing now. It's they like that at night because they very much resist bedtime. I think they're just at that typical age, a 5 and 3-year-old who wants to go to bed right now, but we like to do deep breaths, help them calm down at night.
And the other thing is, don't ask them yes or no questions in terms of bedtime. Are you ready for bed? Don't do yes or no questions. Do 2 choices. Do you want to do deep breathing before you put your pajamas on or after you put your pajamas on? And so that makes them buy into the process, and you keep doing those kinds of questions all the way until bedtime. Like, do you want to hug me with your covers over you, or do you want to hug me with your lying on top of the covers? And if you're giving them the choices, and they know they're being funneled into bed. But the other thing I'm going to say about being more resistive about bedtime at this particular time with the quarantine and everything, you cannot help but communicate your dis-ease with what's going on and your concerns about life. And even though they don't know specifically what's going on with the quarantine, they know something's going on.
Absolutely.
And so part of this extending the bedtime with more cuddling and more hugs and more kisses and another story and stuff may be things that they're worried about. And yours are so small, they may not be able to articulate it.
Right.
But you can ask them with a stuffed toy, you know, what do you think he worries about? And see what they come up with. I wouldn't do that at bedtime.
Yeah.
Because they would end up thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that might give you some insight as to what's going on with them, especially if you keep the news on in the house.
Which we do not. We do not.
I approve of that so much.
Yeah.
Because they see your reactions and they hear words. And when they talk to their friends, they'll say, I heard this thing on the TV, and their friends will explain it with huge authority, even though they're 7.
Yes,
and then
I agree with that.
Believing that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. You have been such a great guest and have given me personally a ton of insight. So this was very, very informative for me.
Good. Okay.
So where can people find you or more information about these topics? You can promote all the things, social media, website, books, everything. The floor is yours.
Okay, so the big deal is that the book is officially coming out June 29th, How to Keep Your Daughter from Slamming the Door. And I'm trying something that's a little nutsy. It's because, you know, with the quarantine and people worried about gathering and stuff, I'm doing a virtual book launch and book signing. So it'll be between 1 and 4 o'clock EST, Eastern Standard Time. And you can just go to my website, deborahanndavis.com, and there's a link there so you can register for it. And there'll be lots of freebies given away in terms of things that moms can use, you know, mom tools, basically. And I'll also be giving away my book, How to Get Your Happy On, which is a nice short book, has a little experiment at the end about how media and music affect your mood.
Okay.
And it's based on science because I'm a science geek. I have to get the science in there somewhere. And let's see. And I have a blog that people are welcome to look at. It's on my website. I have a newsletter they can sign up for called Mary Meddling. Because did I not just tell you how to run your life for the last? And let's see what else. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook, and I wanted to invite your listeners, if they are interested in their moms. I have a group called the Mom Meetup, Raising Confident Girls, on Facebook, and I'd invite all of you to come and join that group.
Absolutely.
So it's a private group, and it isn't just about you coming in there and getting advice. It is about sharing advice and how did you handle the terrible twos, and how are you going to handle the question about the first dance that comes up, and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's moms helping moms.
Cool. Yes, I love that. Well, thank you so much. Again, I really appreciate it so much. Thank you.
It's been a total pleasure. I appreciate you having me.
All right. Bye, y'all. All right. I'm going to stop recording.